Despite the clock at the back of the room, we have 6 o'clock. I guess the clock is lagging by about 5 minutes doing the power outages. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Manitou Springs City Council for May the 7th, 2024. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Against the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would the city clerk please call the roll? And I would note that Councilor Wolf is out of town and she is excused.
Thank you. City Council members Judith Chandler. Present. John Shada. Natalie Johnson. Here. Michelle Weatherholt. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune.
Present.
And Mayor Graham.
Present also. Thank you. Okay, Council, I believe you've all had an opportunity to review the agenda, so I would seek a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
Okay. Moved by Councilor Chandler and seconded by Councilor Shada. Do you want us to vote electronically? Okay, let's vote.
And the motion carries 6-0.
Great, thank you. Motion is passed. The agenda is approved. And takes us to item 8, public comment on non-agenda items. This is the portion of the meeting when anyone in the audience or in the public would like to, if they would like to make a comment about an item that is not on the agenda, you'd have 3 minutes to do so. And I think we have several here, several individuals who want to speak tonight. The first one I received is Melanie Doherty. Melody, would you like to come forward? So you have 3 minutes. If you would give us your name and address when you start. And typically we do not respond to presentation, but we do have your contact information.
Can you hear me? I can hear myself.
Yes. Mhm.
Okay. Melody Doherty, 106 Ruxton Avenue. I stand before you today with a heavy heart. Recent events brought to light issues that go against the values of respect, inclusivity, and mutual understanding we hold dear. Discrimination is a longstanding issue. The historical mistreatment and marginalization of Indigenous people have consequences impacting our social, economic, and cultural well-being. It is rooted in colonialism and a systemic oppression and discriminatory policies. These practices create a cycle of disadvantage, limiting access to resources, opportunities, and basic rights. The Manitou pollinators were informed by Hiawatha Task Force member that the decision to not remove the name Hiawatha centered around what else Manitou's Indigenous would request. How many other street names were going to have to change? Money, time, resources, and legal issues were also cited. I would like to point out that the Manitou Pollinators is not affiliated with this task force. It's been approved by City Council and is not personal, unlike the racist case with a contracted city employee of the COG. Our city administrator, deputy city administrator, city council members, and residents serving on pollinator district projects routinely comprise the Hiawatha Task Force. The Manitou Pollinators have exhausted all avenues of dialogue to rectify these ongoing racist and discriminatory attitudes, behaviors, and decision-making policies within our city administration. The lack of appropriate informed action on part of our city officials leaves us no choice but to take action. We did speak to this reality after the second racist situation rose its ugly head. Under Colorado federal law, discrimination based on race or ethnicity is prohibited, and those found guilty of such offenses may be subject to legal consequences. The Manitou Pollinators sincerely hope that this serves as a final warning and motivates our city administration to take immediate, decisive action and address these violations. In parting, a different task force member informed me that I and the Manitou Pollinators' Indigenous activism over the years is analogous to the pirate ships arriving on North America's shores. The Manitou Pollinators, we find this really interesting, and we have decided we're going to go looking for these native pirate ships so we can figure out where home is. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's see. The next person I'll call up is Paula Hill. Am I reading that right, Paula? Great. Okay, if you come forward again, your name and address, please, and then you have 3 minutes.
My name is Paula Hill. My address is 85 Crystal Park Road.
And can you get the microphone about 3 inches from your mouth there. It's, yeah, thanks.
Thank you. So I appreciate being here and just sharing a little bit of the traffic issue that we have on Crystal Park Road. I am up and down that street because I live on that street and I'm on it 10 times a week, often with dogs. Last week I was, I had passed the Sutherland stop sign and there was a vehicle parked there. Or not parked there, stopped there, and he took off from the stop sign and I was right next to the road and I just made the motion of slow down and he didn't. So I yelled, please slow down. He came to a screeching halt and I thought he was going to back into me. So I was getting my cell phone out to take a picture of his of his license plate and he took off and squealed around the corner and another car came and was trying to get off the road away from him. It was terrifying. So I just thought about, what would make a difference for the people that are walking and biking on that road versus the cars and the people that are driving them. It seems to be just a big issue. They get seemingly riled up because we're asking them to slow down. And I don't want to walk that street feeling afraid. So I would like to see if I could talk to someone about doing some public picnics, I know it's going to be more than one conversation to just get to know each other and just talk about our experiences and why there's such a strife. It feels like, I don't know, it's us against them for some reason. And I just really like to be able to figure out a solution to this and feel safe walking on my street. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, I believe you wanted to talk also? Steve, did you want to address council? Okay, this would be a good time.
Blow as molasses. So give me a second. You already heard about the lady that talked about Crystal Park Road.
Steve, first, I need your full name and your address,
Stephen
please.
Hart, live on Crystal Park Road, 108 Crystal Park Road. Longtime resident there. The road conditions and the speed that cars are using on Crystal Park Road are really a potential accident about to happen. And we've had some, but fortunately nobody's been seriously injured. A little history. Back in the 60s, if there was 20 cars a day on Crystal Park Road, that was a busy day. Today, and I take unofficial counting, I do that about every year. I'm getting 450 to 600 cars an hour between 4 o'clock and 7 p.m. In the morning's probably the same, but I don't get them, go count them. The speeds that the drivers are using, I think, are outlandish. The police chief was down there and said at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and said, well, there's no problem here. Well, there isn't a problem, a general problem, but between 6:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, it's a racetrack. Between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock is a racetrack. And the next couple of weeks is going to get worse because we'll have the tourists who don't understand the road conditions and it will be a little quicker than 25 miles per hour. Then added on top of that, we've added 200 plus homes in Crystal Park and they don't pay a cent for that road. And I don't know what the solution is for that. Second thing is we've got the condos have been built. There's a lot of traffic. There used to be no cars parked on Crystal Park Road. Now there's cars parked on Crystal Park Road. And I know emergency vehicles going up through there with the traffic gets pretty hairy for some of those guys. So those are things that are concerning me. And then we add the foot traffic, people coming off Inman Trail, walking down Crystal Park Road, wherever they're going when they pass my house, which is down by Savelli's. Then you have the school, the track team uses Crystal Park Road to run their cross-country routes, and I don't think I haven't seen them in the last couple of weeks, so I don't know if they're still using that. But there's no place to walk, and the sidewalk is on the north side of Crystal Park Road, but once you get to the corner, then I don't know exactly what happens. There's intermediate sidewalks. So people are walking on the road. And then you got Grandma and Grandpa Hart, who are walking that road, and traffic whizzes by you and nobody cares. And I can tell you some of the cars that zip by there, they may get a little shower if I'm out watering the yard when they come flying through there. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. So the point is that road conditions and the traffic, we've outgrown that road. And that's just how it is. And it's not going to get much better. And I don't know, people of Upper Crystal Park, if they come down the steep hill or they come around, I think a lot of them come down around and go down Crystal Park Road. It's I don't know if it's shorter, but it's easier for them to get down. So anyway, the point is we got a lot of traffic on Crystal Park Road, and having the police chief say there's no problem, to me is not an adequate answer. The solutions, of course, I don't think he has the resources to do it.
Steve,
But
if
it's
you could
patrol
sum
with
up,
police.
please.
Pardon?
If you could sum up. You're past your 3 minutes, so if you can sum
Oh,
up.
past 2 minutes. Okay, I'm done.
Oh, okay. All right. I think we got the point. So,
Okay.
all right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to address council tonight during non-agenda items? Okay, if not, thank you. Let's go ahead and move on then. The next item we have is our consent calendar. We've got 4 items on it tonight. First item being approval of the regular city council meeting minutes for April the 16th, 2024. Second item, considering appointing David Conley to the Open Space Advisory Committee as an alternate member. Third, requesting approval of the general services agreement with Da Vinci Sign Systems Incorporated for the downtown signage replacement project. 4, consideration of adopting resolution number 1024, a resolution of the city of Manitou Springs, Colorado, authorizing the purchase of certain real property. And as always, any member of council is welcome to take an item off the consent calendar for separate discussion. Nancy?
I would like to remove item F4, please, for further discussion.
Item 4 will be discussed separately. And I would like to remove item 3, the sign replacement project, and discuss that separately. Is there anything else anybody wants off? That leaves us then with consent calendar of items 1 and 2. I would look for a motion then to accept and approve those 2 items.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. So the motion then would be to approve items F1 and 2 of the consent calendar. Let's vote.
And the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Let's go ahead and take item 3, take them in the order they're presented. That would be the general services agreement for Da Vinci Sign Systems. And I came up with a number of questions as I was looking through the council packet, and I was able to send questions to the city staff yesterday and got answers back from Aaron. But really, I guess my basic thought is that for $150,000, I'm not sure what we're getting under this contract. And my understanding, based on what Aaron sent me, and I'll forward that email to the rest of council. We're getting something like 42 street name signs, 19 stop signs, 6 yield signs, and 27 poles. And altogether, that's cost us $150,000, which seems like a lot. So Aaron, maybe you could kind of walk us through some of this.
Thank you. Would you want me to go through the full presentation, just kind of to explain how we got here?
Okay, let's see what council's pleasure is. Do you want to should we just give Aaron an opportunity to walk us through this? Okay, Aaron, why don't you go ahead and do that then? Just kind of give us the presentation.
Great, thank you, council. I'm Erin Ringsred, a planner and landscape architect too with the city of Manitou Springs, and I'm going to present just our project process for the downtown signage with the contractor recommendation. Next slide, please. This project started out as a historic topper project while looking at street name signs specifically. Through sort of the process, it grew a little bit in terms of the scope of my analysis. But the goals of this project are to meet all MUTCD standards, which is our traffic signage standards that are upheld by CDOT, which was an important one given that this is a roadway that we share with CDOT. That through this signage process, we would improve safety, and this is by having, our signs in the best place with the best visibility, and making sure that from a reflectivity standpoint, any materials that we're using for any new signs meet those MUTCD standards. And then also increase ADA accessibility. While walking the corridor, I was noting that some of our signs exceed sort of the overhang and they're in a walking surface, which, hampers somebody. One, it's encroaching in our walking surface, but also if someone is has visual challenges and they're relying on a cane to navigate the world, they're not getting proper notice that there's going to be an overhang into their walkway. So that was another goal and problem that was identified along the corridor. There was also, one of the original desires with this topper program was to enhance the branding and placemaking along Manitou Avenue. We have this logo that has been updated and wanting to find ways to have that identity carry over into the built realm as well. And then through this analysis and inventory, we noticed that there are a lot of signs. So finding ways to reduce both signage clutter, so where there can be one sign where there are many, or simply finding ways to take them off of some of the sign poles and have less vertical interruptions in our walking area or planting beds. Next slide, please. This is a collection of just 3 photos. However, I do have photo documentation of every single photo or every single sign along Manitou Ave. The image on the left shows that there are 3 signs and a light pole within that corner planting area. The street name signs are not on top of the stop sign, which is where generally people are looking for that information. And the yield to pedestrians and the pedestrian signs are on separate poles as well. So that contributes to that visual clutter. And then in looking at the street name signs on the top of the pole, we see a difference in font, in size of font, and in how or where that avenue versus boulevard is noted. And then some, not necessarily those in this picture, but there's some areas where the street name or the street pole, the sign pole foundations are damaged, whether they've been, hit too many times or have just aged at that location. Next slide, please. And then at these intersections, there are 22 intersections here along the study area for this project. On those, there are 22 street name sign markers, but even though there's 22, there's actually 5 intersections that didn't have a street name sign on them. And with that, that's where we wanted to kind of take this as the phase 1. We explored different options for phasing, but the street name sign, we felt like we had the biggest impact. Those were some areas where there was the most variety. And I think in terms of clarity of messaging as people are navigating, we wanted to reduce any confusion. Next sign, please, or slide. So then one thing we did was we did do this design instead of hiring a consultant for the design. I utilized my background in landscape architecture to create a sign, street name sign design intent. So we took the illustration portion of the brand because what we had seen elsewhere, there's some old logos that's used and it's so small on the street name sign that it's really not showcasing that brand identity. The Pikes Peak language underneath the illustration is particularly small and not legible when you're putting it out in the space at the sort of pace or the distance that we'd want to sort of have this be legible and visible. And so we looked at some different options in terms of background, but given our MUTCD standards, we wanted to use a standard background color and incorporate our branding in the logo on the left side. Next slide, please. This project, one of the things it started with was some of this historic sub-districts. We explored having how we would want to sort of showcase that in the process. And we settled on the text is what changes, but the color would remain the same at the top because we only have so many colors in our brand. We didn't want to muddy the brand by adding colors. And so that would be another sort of standard and something that meets that contrast, again, for those MUTCD standards. Next slide. Yeah, thank you. And so this is the site plan we provided for our RFB. We don't have surveying of each of these locations. So this was how we communicated the locations as well as the quantity and the different districts that it would be going through. And that in order to, as part of that RFB, we noted that staff would help field locate those future locations. So I'd be working with Juan to make sure those locations are going in a place that's not obstructing vision in sight triangles at intersections and really enhancing all of those safety and accessibility concerns. Next slide, thank you. So this was the document that I put together as part of the RFB, and this is where I don't generate fabrication drawings, and this is communicating design intent that we would then need a contractor to take into what would be considered a fabrication drawing or a construction drawing, and really figure out how those connections are being made on the signs, as well as making sure that whatever goes out there is being built and installed in a way that stands up to the climate and the wind loads that we experience. One of the other things that I had documented in the inventory is that we have a wide array of pole types along the corridor. We have yellow, green, galvanized, round, galvanized square, black, square and round. And so the other, I'll say direction or sort of potential outcome we saw through this inventory is setting up a standard for the city so that there's a manual whenever any new sign is installed along the streetscape that we're installing that at a consistent height to make sure we're meeting all clear zones, as well as giving you that visual clarity and I'll say understanding along the corridor, because sometimes more signs does not mean more clarity in terms of the message, whether it's a safety message or a parking message that they're trying to communicate. And so some information on terms of the RFB process, RFB results. We opened the RFB in December of 2023 and closed it in January of 2024. We had 4 companies sign on to the pre-bid meeting. One was only a fabricator and they didn't have installation, and that's why they said that they did not go after it, because they couldn't find a contractor to team up on this size of project. And then we don't know why the third one did not bid. One of the companies that did submit did not meet our RFB criteria, so they did not fill out the forms and follow that checklist in a way that was complete. And so we went with the one that had the complete contract or the complete submittal. Da Vinci Sign Systems, who is out of Windsor, Colorado, they've given us an estimated timeline for construction of 8 weeks. 4 to 6 weeks is that fabrication drawings and then fabrication phase. As part of that process, some services that they're going to provide for us that would not be on staff is, again, creating those fabrication drawings, talking about how those connections are being made, really getting into the nitty-gritty of, 1/4 inch versus 1/16 inch, that kind of thing. But then they'd also, they'll create not a physical mock-up, but a printable mock-up for us for each and every sign that would be installed on the corridor. So we as staff can review, make sure all the spelling is being upheld, all that detailing is matching the design intent as we bid the documents. And then they're also going to create a in the field that will stay there as it's installed, if it meets our criteria, but we'll have a full mock-up to review and approve it before they make all of the signs. We can look and make sure that everything about how that one is installed is meeting the design intent and the quality that we expect in Manitou. And then from an installation standpoint, they're estimating 1 to 2 weeks for installation time, and some of that's weather conditions. And we do have unknowns because of that survey. We know approximate locations, but whether that's in a planting area versus can be mounted onto the sidewalk, that sort of thing. I did have our contractor provide some information in terms of sort of the man hours to accomplish this, because some of that labor is what goes into this cost is for the fabrication labor, so design and making the signs, they anticipate 192 man hours for this sign quantity and customization. And then in terms of install labor, they're estimating 473 man hours. So that's where that is not staff time, where, that would be a significant amount of staff time to make this project happen in-house. And so I wanted to kind of share those hours in terms of what we would estimate for our staff to install that as well. Any questions that I can answer as part of this?
Council, I went ahead and I had received an email. Basically, Aaron had authored it today, and it went to Denise and came to me, and now I've sent it out to you. So it does have some financial information as to what various things cost. And I guess, to me, this looks like a lot of money for 42 street signs. We got 19 stop signs and 6 yield signs. Those seem to be pretty much stock objects, 27 poles. We only got one responsive bidder on this. Yeah, I'm inclined to go back and see if we can get a rebid and get a better price. I have no idea what it would really cost, what it should cost, but this just seems so out of line here. Yeah, please go ahead, Nancy.
My only question is, the contract looked like it was bid in January with this potential start date of March. So I was wondering why it's so late coming to us for approval.
Yeah, go for it.
And take that. Some of it has been, of course, staffing, but some of it has been negotiations. They have been pushing back for a while, trying to get this price down, seeing what we can cut, everything that we can do to try to get it down as low as we can. So that's taken most of it, is going back and forth on the negotiations and trying to get it cut in every possibility we can.
And Aaron, are there other companies out there that do this sort of work?
There are other sign fabricators. What we found is they don't all have that installation arm. And from an installation, this would be just my professional experience outside of the city, is that a lot of times projects like this are undertaken as part of maybe a larger scope of work, whether it's a street reconstruction or something like that. So then it's part of a larger GC contract that's doing that installation. So that's where I've seen it more often, and which is why it starts to explain why we didn't have as many respondents as we, obviously always hope to make sure it's as competitive as possible.
Yeah, my sense is that we've given high level guidance to staff, and we've been working on signage in the city for years, since before I was on council 6+ years ago. And we've given high level guidance, policy guidance to beautify the city and to decrease clutter and to make a consistent sign policy design and so on. So I'm inclined to support this, just because I would like to see this actually finally get done. And I also think that staff has a very good track record of I don't want to say pinching pennies, but being very efficient in contracts and managing contracts very well. So I was pleased actually to see this on the calendar for today. Thanks.
Thank you. Judith?
Thank you. I appreciate you coming and and presenting this to us and answering questions. On the project goals listed on slide 2, you mentioned reducing sign clutter, and it wasn't clear to me in the packet exactly how many signs would be removed. So that's my only question, then I have a follow-up comment.
Yeah, so this phase would be primarily focusing around intersections in terms of sign clutter. So that example picture where there's 3 signs, we would be taking away at least 1 pole, if not 2, from that intersection. And so that's what we're looking at. I think in terms of future phases of the reduction of sign clutter, that's where that manual comes in, and that's where it could be integrated with the essential services of our streets crew, instead of sort of taking concerted like week of them just doing that. But it would be something that then would be on their radar where we would identify signs that need to be removed or relocated. And that's something we could do in-house on maybe a longer timeline, as things like the stormwater cleanout and road repairs take priority, and then they would work through that as well.
So my question was, with this particular proposal, how many signs would be eliminated if we approved this project, you know?
Yeah, it's not as many in the first phase. It is only about 3 or 5 that would be removed as part of this first project. Where we would be in terms of quantity of signs, where we would be reducing, we'll say the visual clutter, is by taking a closer look at the location of those signs and making sure they're showing up in the right place, and that you're not having tree branches in the way of you reading them and things like that. So it's not necessarily a huge reduction in numbers as part of this first phase, but building consistency across the signs that you're seeing, which reduces sort of how we perceive that clutter, and it's going to look more uniform and therefore less cluttered.
So 3 to 5 signs with
Mhm.
this project. Refresh my memory, and maybe Denise, you can answer this question. Did we not approve this in the budget when we approved our budget?
Yeah,
So
you did.
and I will finish with a comment that I have some congruency with Mayor Pro Tem Fortune. I overall really like the design and the logo and the branding colors, and would be inclined to be in favor of moving forward with this. Thank you.
Mr. Shada?
I also like this proposal because I think I think the current kind of galvanized steel look downtown is sort of kind of cheapy looking thing. And so I have to commend this proposal that, you picked some nice looking, black poles, I guess, right? And I think that really will add a real, shall we say, kind of step up. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor Shada.
Natalie, do you have anything?
I also have been working on signage in the community for years, and this is, I think, the culmination of, this is a long time coming. So, and you are working within the budget, which I appreciate. So, I'm in favor of this.
Okay, Michelle? Okay, well, it looks like I'm going to oppose this, but it looks like I'm going to be voted out. But just doing a little bit of math, and I realize, council, I just got this information this afternoon because I only thought of the questions yesterday. But it looks to me like we could be paying upwards of $1,000 for a sign. I mean, really, we're talking about 42 signs, custom signs, and they look nice, and they're aesthetically pleasing, and they're functional, and I like all that. It's just the price tag that concerns me. The information we got is that the installation cost is going to be $73,819, 54 cents. I think you said it's $473 or 473 man hours to install. That puts the labor cost at $156 per hour. I mean, I don't know how they can possibly make a profit, at $156 an hour for one labor person. So it looks to me like the city's getting gouged. I think we should, we had hoped to get this done earlier, been on the to-do list for years. If they started working on it next week, the installation would be the end of June to the middle of July, something like that. So it'd be right during the height of the tourist season. At this point, I think we could wait and I'd look for a cheaper price. But I don't think I'm gonna, I think I'm gonna be in the minority here. So unless there's, Nancy, go ahead.
I just want to make a motion.
Go ahead and make a motion.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we approve general services agreement with the Da Vinci Sign Systems Incorporated for the downtown signage replacement project.
Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? Let's vote.
The motion carries 6-1 with Mayor Graham as the desisting vote.
Okay, thank you. All right, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. Okay, so now let's push on to item F4. That's consideration adoption resolution 1024. Nancy, you were the council member who asked to have that pulled, so you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you. And I asked to have this pulled because I want to vote no on it. We've had a lot of discussion that the public is not aware of, and this is to purchase the car wash property next door to the Dillon Motel for $650,000. I think that, and that's almost double what the appraised price is. So in this case, I think it's way too much, and I would much rather put that money toward public transportation. I think that's much better use of it if we're talking about mobility within the city. So I would just like to have a vote, a public vote on it, and express my position. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Natalie?
Sure. Well, I think, since we brought this up, I guess there's two things I wanted to mention. One, I think it's kind of important and that came up in discussion is the idea that to access that property is difficult because the entrance to that property is in a turn lane. And so in terms of working with CDOT and things like that, I think that there's a significant chance that that property could have just sort of sat there. And so I think connecting it to the Dillon property, I think was important, at least for me, knowing that access to that lot was sort of contingent upon going through that property, through the Dillon property. So that was important, at least for me to mention. And then the other thing is, I'm actually interested in the idea of having a conversation, if staff is interested or staff can support this, or we're interested in supporting this, of having some kind of a public process or community outreach around how we kind of want to activate this property now that it's larger than we'd anticipated, and there's more opportunity to maybe consider different things. And so I don't know if council's interested in that or not.
Thank you. Other comments? John?
I understand that, there's always an appraised price. And then there is the price you have to pay. And I think this is a key component to us doing a great project down at the Dillon, where it is just not only parking. I think we really can stand out by creating a really distinctive transit center and parking area that has amenities, picnic amenities, connection into the Creek Walk Trail, a great place for interpretation and staff to kind of help people kind of get oriented. I think it adds an excellent amenity to the URA area and gets people down there so that maybe there are other businesses and whatnot that we can connect them into. So I recognize that if we only look at this purchase only with this little corner in mind, okay, it seems like it's expensive, but I think there's a bigger vision here that we can achieve by doing this. We got Denise Howell made a heck of a deal to get the Dillon property. This thing here came in a little bit higher, but I think overall, the average of it is a pretty darn good price for essentially this entire parcel. And so I think we ought to, move forward with this and really challenged ourselves to do a great project there where when we open up, we do not have people using the restroom in a plastic box. We have great amenities that are down there that we can kind of remodel, a great location for some staff and maybe some chamber interpretation, especially during the high season, and a great cleanup, okay, of that ramp on US 24, like what Natalie says, which essentially with more and more traffic that are down there, that is not probably a good, safe place to have people coming and going out of that isolated parcel. And it should probably be, reorganized the way we're kind of dealing with the highway department in terms of how we would get in and out of that Dillon parking area. So I think we ought to move forward with this. Thank you.
Judith?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to piggyback on what Counselor Shada started talking about. I do agree that a community engagement process would be wonderful for this area. But, for the last 3 community surveys, the number one thing that our residents have been concerned with is traffic congestion and parking. And I just want to go on record that this council has really worked very hard to try to figure out a way to start to pull automobile traffic out of the core, at the same time enhance the business in the URA while providing what we envisioned while we were discussing purchasing this property, a mobility hub that's really beautiful with perhaps bike ride stations, bike lockers, parking, and perhaps even a trail access to the to Fountain Creek and Fields Park. So it's a bigger vision. And I just want to reiterate and say that again, yes, there were several items that went into the appraisal, but it does come down to what is it worth to us and what do we stand to gain? And when you look at the potential parking revenue and other amenities that we want to provide, I think it's a really tremendous project when we combine that with the future of the Dillon. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle, did you? Okay, any other counselors? Because if Nancy hadn't asked to pull this off the consent calendar, I would have. I am going to vote against this. In many ways, I like some of the comments been said about those of you who support the purchase, because I think there's some opportunities we can use for the long-term benefit of the community. I just think we're paying too much money for it. I think our strategy, the strategy that the majority council supported is not the strategy I would take, and I'll just leave it at that. So I think we're paying too much. Anyway, any further discussion? Do we have a motion? Okay, Mr. Shada,
second.
motion approved, seconded by Councilor Chandler. Any further discussion? If not, let's vote.
Motion carries 4-2 with the dissenting votes, Mayor Graham and Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Oh, Denise, yes.
I would just like to ask a question because I don't want to leave here thinking that I'm going one way and I may need to go a different way. What I've heard is you want some public involvement with this and public participation as we move forward. Do I have consensus? That's what the council's wanting as we move forward. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Denise. Okay, let's move on then. We have one presentation tonight. That's proclamation number 0424, a proclamation recognizing April 26th, 2024 as National Arbor Day. And it's perhaps belated, but maybe that's good because we didn't know that we were going to be losing some trees with the wind from the last couple of days. So I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. National Arbor Day, April 26, 2024. Whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, and providing habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore, I, John Graham, Mayor of the City of Manitou Springs, do hereby proclaim April 26th, 2024 as Arbor Day in the City of Manitou Springs. And I urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Adopted the 7th day of May, 2024 in the City of Manitou Springs, El Paso County, Colorado. Thank you. And we have Jillian, our Parks Director. Jillian, would you like to say anything regarding this?
Jillian Rossi, Parks and Recreation Director for the City of Manitou Springs. Thank you for reading the proclamation, Mayor Graham. And I would like to say that our Parks and Recreation Department considers every day Arbor Day in Manitou Springs. And I appreciate you reading this a little belated. This is also one of the requirements for our Tree City USA standard that we have been successful with every year, I believe, for the past 5 years at least. So I appreciate that. And our team did plant 25 trees on Arbor Day in the Crystal Valley Cemetery with the help of volunteers. So that was a really special event that everyone was looking forward to. And at this point, I believe we're up to over 50 trees total that have been planted this spring by our arborist team and our Parks Maintenance Division. So we did lose 2 trees yesterday, 2 freshly planted trees due to the windstorm, but they will be replaced. And we're almost to our goal for our tree planting this year. So very exciting. And thank you for reading the proclamation.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Do any counselors have comments you'd like to make? Judith?
Yes, I walk a lot in this town and I did see the tree down at Schreiber. That was really something to see that today. But I live over by Fields Park and I just think it's beautiful what's been done there along the parking and around these sidewalks. And I just want to kudos not only for the tree planting and for recognizing Arbor Day, but just the amazing city turnout to clean up after all of this wind damage. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Jillian. Okay. Well, we are at receive or act on council correspondence tonight. So does anyone have anything? Judith?
Yes, I just want to acknowledge the residents that came to speak about the traffic concerns on Crystal Park Road. You are not alone. I've had many calls and emails, not only from people in that area, but also on the east end of town, El Paso Beckers. I just want to throw out the possibility of a feasibility study for some speed cameras. You know, other communities are using speed cameras. I think that speed cameras in certain areas of town might help us relieve a number of issues and perhaps free up the police department for, other services that they can provide here in Manitou. So I just wanted to throw that out for discussion purposes and see if that's something council is wanting to pursue.
Okay, thank you. Do you have anything else from council? John?
There was quite a discussion today in the URA meeting about the lighting in the URA along Manitou Avenue. And I think since we've agreed to move ahead with dark sky things, I think we saw lots of comments in the city survey. CSU was at the URA meeting today, and my conclusion was that there are approximately 50 of those kind of tulip lights in the URA. Apparently, they have the ability to be dimmed down by essentially them just putting somebody up in a bucket truck and changing a setting. And didn't appear like to me that it would be any more than maybe $500 a light, if that kind of thing. So I guess I'd like to propose we either have this on a work session agenda, or if there's maybe some kind of consensus that staff would be directed to look into and bring us back a proposal. I think I'm not certain that all that lighting down there is doing something other than just making it appear like almost kind of like, you know, Canyon City in terms of what we have. And I think we have other areas in town in which we have some much more subdued lighting, and we do not have a crime problem with it. So I'm not tied into this kind of thing that somehow or another all this extra lighting is creating a reduction in crime or something down there. So that's just my comment, that and I'm just opening it up for discussion, and I'll defer to the mayor in terms of how he wants to talk about this.
Okay, John, I not having been at the ORA, I think I'm missing part of it here. So actually, Nancy, you were there, right? Okay, let's get Nancy's take on this and we'll know a little bit more. Nancy?
Yeah, thanks, John. Both Johns. I did attend the ORA meeting this morning as their liaison. And they did discuss this. They had two members from the CSU there to talk about it, although they could provide very little information this morning, other than to say that there are dimmer switches on there, but that they would work with the city to implement whatever the city would like. And the ORA suggestion is a couple things. One is that there'd be some sort of community engagement because it's a larger city issue, and that there's some people that really like the lights and the brightness of them, and there's some people that don't and want them either eliminated or turned down. So there's the usual dichotomy in Manitou of what people do and do not want. Secondly, there's an issue with safety and MTUCD or whatever it's called, requirements. So basically they indicated that if the city were to ask for further analysis of what could be done, they would be responsive to that. And they were unable or unwilling to come up with a cost estimate of how much it would cost to either turn them down or eliminate them and so on. Because they don't want to, as they said, lie. So yeah, that was a very interesting discussion this morning. And I guess they discussed a number of other things, but that was probably the one that council is most interested in at this point. So I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Oh, okay, so that helps. Thank you, Nancy. So John, I guess what you were thinking of is your interest is in basically dimming the lights.
Right.
Okay, and I gather that was certainly part of the thrust of the meeting this morning.
Right.
So that's
Right.
what you're proposing to
And-
talk about
and-
that.
And there were some comments, but I think it was just tongue in cheek that it would cost millions. And then the expert said that, you know, it's basically getting up with a bucket truck. There's apparently some dip switches or something up there that can be just toggled and they can kind of get it done. And I can't imagine how, unless we're using this sign company, that we're talking about a lot of money. John, thank you.
Thank you, John. Good. Well, I'm glad to see we have a sense of humor here. Good. Okay, well, how would it be if we give CSU an opportunity to check it out so they can, as Nancy says, not lie, give us some accurate information? And then kick around. It seems like it wouldn't cost much to kick this around. We just bring it back to a work session. Okay.
Maybe $5,000 to try.
Actually, I remember talking to Dole about something like this. These were the lamps down on the Marcy Morrison Bridge, and it sounded like those would be very cheap to turn off, because I remember having this discussion several years ago in the context of dark skies. This was before that bridge was built. So
My comment is, we already know what it looks like right now. And to me, I think for maybe $2,000 to $5,000 to try a different look. And like Nancy says, get some community, you know, thing, but I think it's going to be very, very difficult for people to sit around and imagine what it will look like it. And I think a modest cost, maybe even a certain corridor or whatever, to kind of see what it looks like is worthwhile. And so I think we ought to just direct staff to work with CSU, come up with a proposal, see what it costs, okay, and then try it out. And it seems like for a few $1,000s, if we don't like it, they can get back up on the bucket trucks and change the dip switches and we go back to the current configuration. Thank you.
I like that. And I'd like to see us collect some information or, keep records of this so that I can see in the coming years that we're going to talk more about dark skies. I think we talked a little bit about that. So if we had that information, it would be good, going forward. Natalie?
I think we need to cut it off and just make it a work session and stop the.
Okay. All right. I think that's council's desire. Then we'll talk about it at a work session. Okay. Anything else? Nancy?
Yeah, I did attend the Earth Church ceremony 2 Sundays ago, I think, and they did plant 4 apple trees in Mansions Park back here. So they're very, very, very appreciative. And I believe they participated in the tree planting in Crystal Cemetery. Is that correct, Jillian? The Earth Church folks? Okay. Okay. Okay, very good. But anyway, so that was an interesting experience. And I did just want to quickly ask, it is my understanding that Hiawatha, there's no decision on Hiawatha Gardens name. So I just wanted to put that out for the record that nobody, that is still a matter of discussion of what it will ultimately, how it will ultimately be named. So just to correct the record on that. Thank you.
Anything else, council? Okay, if not, let's have the city administrator's report.
Couple of quick things. We did a little over 60 truckloads on chipping day on Saturday, which is wonderful. We'll be doing another chipping day. We just don't have the date scheduled yet, but we'll be getting it out hopefully by the end of this week, the middle of next week, with the storm that just came up. Also, I want to congratulate staff and recognize them for all the hard work that they did yesterday. I drove around early. I'm sure many of you did. You saw trees down. They were out at 6:30 in the morning already chopping to get trees cleared so people could get out of their driveway and get in the street. So I want to recognize them for that. And then Councilor Chandler mentioned the speed, what are they called? Again, speed cameras. We are already looking into that. We started that last week or a week ago. Carwell Springs did approve it, I think 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So we've started looking into it of what the cost would be. How would we do it? We'll need to check with our attorney about the legal, et cetera, with those. So we have started looking at it and we'll be bringing that back to council. We will definitely, if it's the direction that I'm receiving, is we'll go ahead and start working with CSU on these lights and then put together a work session in the near future. I don't have a date yet, but I'll look at it and see when we can bring that back and try to get them done. They did do the dimmers on Becker's Lane and you can tell a difference on those lights. So if you go on Becker's Lane, those are all dimmed. We worked with you to make sure that we kept those dark skies, and we can basically do that same thing because they're the same lights on that corridor, but we'll be working on that and bringing it back to council if that's the direction that everybody has.
Thank you, Denise. Mr. Shada?
I think the other thing too is I believe a previous council did some dimming of the lights down there by the Armadillo. And I believe that meets, federal standards. So I think that's another thing that people ought to go check and see the difference between essentially the lighting plan that's down there around the Armadillo at night. Okay. And then just walk 1 block east or west. And I think you can see the difference. I believe it's essentially the same fixture as what we purchased down there as well. So, I think there's also some stuff that people can kind of go look and see. This isn't like a huge radical experiment. I think we already know that we can do this, okay, and be in compliance, okay, with all the standards. And I don't think there was any interest on the part of CSU of us, forcing them to do something that would make it so dark that, it wouldn't meet state highway standards. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so that brings us to, we've got one last item on tonight's agenda, and that's an executive session. So what I'll do is I'll read the executive session. I'll seek a motion to go into executive session, and then we'll take a short break to give staff a chance to make the appropriate adjustments and for the audience to comfortably leave the room. So this is an executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney for legal advice pursuant to section 5.1C of the Manitou Springs Home Rule Charter concerning the Colorado Springs Utilities Electric Franchise Agreement. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I move we do that.
Okay. Do we have a second? Okay. Motion by Counselor Shada, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Fortune. Let's vote.
And the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you. So let's take a break and let's plan on